To the truth, and his time in office is a forest fire, damaging our country's norms and traditions. They come from former FBI Director James Comey. His firing last May by President Trump led to the appointment of Special Counsel Robert Mueller and has made him the target of Mr. Trump's criticism for the last year. Comey's new book, A Higher Loyalty, is both a memoir and, in his eyes, a lesson in leadership, ethics, and hard decisions. I spoke to James Comey just a short time ago and began with what he would have written differently.
Maybe only one small thing. Early on, people were seizing on a portion of the book, a paragraph where I described my first impressions of President-elect Trump, and people took it, distorted it, in my view, like I was taking shots at the guy, which I wasn't. I was trying to be an author. But it became such a distraction that if I had it to do over again, I might yank that paragraph out, describe everybody else in detail, but not include that distracting paragraph.
The personal detail about
Yeah,
him.
people thought I was taking shots at him by describing his face and his hair, and I didn't intend to. I was trying to be an author for the first time, and my editor kept saying, bring the reader with you. And so I tried to do it when I described my high school grocery store boss. I tried to do it when I described Donald Trump, but it became a bit of a talking point.
Well, let's talk about some recent developments. Just on Friday, the House Intelligence Committee, the Republican majority, issued its report on their findings. They are raising doubts about one of the key findings from the intelligence agencies, and namely that the Russian government wanted to help Donald Trump. They are saying it's more likely that they just wanted to sow discord. Is that how you read the information you knew before you left government?
No. In fact, we read it very, very differently, as did the analysts from FBI, CIA, NSA, and the Director of National Intelligence. We reached a joint high-confidence conclusion that one of the goals, there were three goals, but one was to help elect Donald Trump.
So clear difference.
Clear.
With the committee,
Yep.
or the committee.
High confidence, which is very unusual in a joint intelligence community assessment.
The Republican majority also said, I mean, you know this, you were asked about it, that they found no evidence of collusion, coordination with the Trump campaign. You said yesterday that the report did not reflect the facts you knew before you left the FBI. So does that mean you saw facts that did point to collusion?
I'm not in a position where I can talk about what we found during the investigation, and obviously I'm not up to date since I've been gone almost a year. But that isn't my sense of where the investigation stood when I left.
So there was something specific that you knew or saw that pointed you in that direction?
Well, the FBI was investigating whether there were Americans who had conspired with or aided and abetted the Russians. Collusion actually is not a legal term that I'm aware of. And there was a basis for investigating, meaning there were facts to support an investigation. Now, what the conclusions will be, I don't know. But to say there was no evidence just wasn't the case.
The report also, the Republican report, House Intelligence Committee, is also faulting the FBI for failing to properly notify victims of Russian hacking. Did the FBI drop the ball?
I don't think so. We had a massive task to notify hundreds and hundreds, so I can't sit here and say we did it perfectly every time. But especially with the prominent victims, like the Democratic National Committee, I believe we did our level best to make sure they knew they were being attacked.
And do you think the Obama administration dropped the ball in not doing more to get the Russians to back off?
That's hard for me to say, because a lot of it I was not involved in. Very tough decision for President Obama. What do you say before an election about the Russian interference when one of their goals is to sow doubt about our electoral process? By calling it out, have you accomplished their goal for them? So I get the position he was in.
One other point from this majority report, the House Intelligence Committee, it says this is a so-called Steele dossier prepared by the former British agent Christopher Steele about President Trump and other things, quote, formed an essential part of an application to the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, to begin electronic surveillance. Is that accurate? Could there have been a FISA warrant without the Steele dossier?
It's not my recollection that it was an essential part of any application. I have to choose my words carefully here because I don't know exactly what's been declassified, but there was a mosaic of information that convinced a court that that individual, Carter Page, there was probable cause to believe he was an agent of a foreign power.
But you're not saying that there had to be a dossier for this to happen.
In order to get the FISA
Right.
warrant. That's not my recollection.
You've also had a long time to think about what was in that dossier. Did you find it credible?
Well, the core allegation of the dossier was credible, consistent with the other intelligence that the intelligence community had gathered. That is, that the Russians were engaged in a sophisticated, comprehensive effort aimed at our election. That turned out to be true. There were lots of spokes in the dossier off of that central hub, but the central hub was consistent with other intelligence. An effort was underway to try and understand whether the other spokes could be ruled in or ruled out, and I don't know where that ended up.
So the Hillary Clinton emails, you spend a good chunk of this book defending your actions. The first time, absolving her of illegality, but then going on to say she was, quote, extremely careless. Later on announcing that the investigation was being reopened. You write that you felt you did what you needed to do to protect the agency and how you saw your own role. But Secretary Clinton, when we interviewed her last fall, said when it came to your July news conference, she saw something very different. She called it a breach of professional ethics and a rejection of Justice Department protocols. Here's what she said.
The investigation was getting nowhere. There was nothing to find. And he was in a position of having to accept the evidence that there was no case. I think what he did, against the advice of people around him in the FBI and the Justice Department, was in large measure due to political pressures that he was under from people that he had worked with before, in the FBI and outside the FBI.
What about that?
That's just not accurate. I hope Secretary Clinton will get a chance, if not to read the whole book, read those parts of it. It was about trying to make sure we did all we could to assure the public the work had been done in a competent, honest, and independent way. It wasn't contrary to advice inside the FBI. It didn't violate the protocols of the Department of Justice, except in one key respect. I decided to make the announcement separate from the Attorney General for a variety of reasons, but it wasn't about politics. It was about assuring people we did this in a good, honest, and independent way.
But that's a pretty serious charge, a violation of professional ethics?
Yeah, I get where that's coming from. It's just not accurate. And again, I read the part of Secretary Clinton's book that was about the emails, and I would very much hope
lie. But then she says the proximate cause of her defeat was your October 28th letter about reopening the investigation after finding those emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop, which she says has never been adequately explained or defended, had nothing to do with the earlier finding. That's what she said. And here's how Donald Trump reacted.
The FBI has just sent a letter to Congress informing them that they have discovered new emails pertaining to the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's investigation. I have great respect for the fact that the FBI and the Department of Justice are now willing to have the courage to right the horrible mistake that they made.
So President Trump, in effect, celebrating or Secretary Clinton saying this was the proximate cause that she lost.
Yeah. And it reflects the confusion that political people have in trying to figure out whose side is the FBI on when we weren't, and it isn't today on anybody's side. We were trying to make decisions when there was no good option. There were bad options and there were worse options, and each case we tried our best to choose bad over worse. And fitting that into a partisan lens is impossible, which is why you have this, I guess Donald Trump was a fan of the FBI back in that day because he thought we had done something for him. We weren't doing something for him, nor were we trying to hurt Secretary Clinton. We were trying to do the right thing.
How does it feel to you to be the object of this kind of strong language from the two nominees for president? in 2016?
It's painful. The whole process was a nightmare. Look, I wish that Secretary Clinton had never had a personal email server. I wish Anthony Weiner had never had a laptop. And maybe they wish there'd never been an Anthony Weiner. But when you get stuck in a situation like that, you know that you're stuck. And that especially in a partisan environment, people are going to be mad at you because they assume you're not on their side. We're trying to be on the country's side. So it's painful, but honestly, even looking back, it doesn't change the way I think about it.
Another thing from President Trump, he often complains loudly about FBI leaks. How much of a problem is that?
It's a problem in any organization. It's not, in my mind, a huge problem in the FBI. When it happens, we investigate it. If it's classified information, we do a criminal investigation. If it's not, we do an internal investigation. It matters, but it's not, the FBI is not a sieve. It happens because we have 38,000 people.
I ask in part because 2 years ago, there were widespread reports fueled by Rudy Giuliani that there were anti-Hillary Clinton agents in the New York FBI office who leaked bad stuff about her. Giuliani even suggested that he knew about some of this ahead of time. Did that concern you?
Yes. In fact, Rudy Giuliani made a statement at the end of October that he knew something big was coming. Like, if that's true, he knew something big was coming before I did. But after we had to reopen the email investigation, I commissioned an investigation to try to find out, was someone giving him non-public information in violation of our rules? The investigation wasn't finished before I was fired, but I know I ordered it, and I'm confident they followed that order.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you have reason to believe that he was tipped off?
I don't. I was very concerned by his statements and wanted to find out.
But where does that stand today?
I don't know. I got fired on May the 9th, and it wasn't finished by then.
And the rest of the interview tomorrow when James Comey has more to say about the Hillary Clinton emails, the role played by former Attorney General Loretta Lynch, and hard decisions he and the FBI faced in 2016.